Girl.
Dude.
Let's talk about it.
Welcome.
We're here to discuss Game Changer by Rachel Reid.
Let's get into it. If you watch a show and don't immediately trade memes and giggles with your best Judy, did you really have the few viewing experience?
Of course not. When the credits roll, that's our signal to debrief.
I'm Jose Miguel.
And I'm Lesley.
And we've been friends since we were kids.
And we realize some shows are just too good not to gab about. This is Heated Reverence.
Kip knew that he was more to Scott's frequent visits than blended fruit, but he never let himself imagine being invited back to Scott's penthouse.
We also don't actually have to do this.
How would you feel about ordering in?
With reckless abandon, never mind touched everywhere all at once. What happens is red hot, incredible and frequent, but also only on Scott's terms and always behind closed apartment doors. Scott needs Kip in his life, but with playoff season approaching, the spotlight on him suddenly is brighter than ever. He can't afford to do anything that might derail his career, like introducing the world to his boyfriend. Kip is ready to go all in with Scott, but how much longer will he have to remain a secret? Let's kick it off with the vibe check here.
I listened to the book on audio before I had the ebook. What looms over me in terms of the vibe is the surprise that Kip has a Brooklyn accent and the portrayal of said Brooklyn accent by the narrator. That thing was so incredibly thick. It was over the top, and it made no sense to me, because how is it that Kip has such a thick accent, but his parents don't have an accent at all?
So we both listened to the book on Audible. Let's just say that. I was so confused why they made him sound like he's an idiot, like a buffoon. Like, he doesn't represent that as a character at all.
It was throwing me off for the sex scene.
Yes.
Like I'm trying to
Scott?
picture.
Scott?
Yeah.
Anytime we had any of these sex scenes going on, ooh, Scott, ooh. Like, it's just like, it was like, yes, sweetheart. I also loved how, like, you sent me a voice memo trying to, like, be nice about it. Because you were just like, he's a math teacher who had an accent, and you're like, I can't hate on this. I was like, girl, it just sounds like shit. Let's just be honest. Let's leave it for what it is.
No, I just feel like as a New Yorker, we should have a certain kind of immunity to difficult accents. But I don't know what it was. It's just like, I felt like you took a character who is an intellectual and made him sound like goofy. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your...
No one else in the whole entire audiobook had an accent.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, if they were doing it because they're repping New York, that's why it doesn't make sense that the parents didn't have one.
Yeah. And it wasn't even like a true do better toward Tom, Tor, whoever your name is. Like, you're great at other voices. You did amazing. I was into it, but like, you really messed it up with Kip. I hope Rachel sends him a cease and desist or something. I know it was recorded in 2019, but seriously.
Does Rachel even have a say? Is it the publishing company that decides this? Like, whoever it was that was in charge, next time, focus group whoever that accent is supposed to represent.
Yeah.
Focus group them. Is this offensive?
That was not even close to a Brooklyn or a New York accent.
What was your vibe?
I felt like it was one big porno for like 10 hours straight. And I'm not hating on it for saying this. Maybe I haven't consumed audiobooks. That it was just like, what is happening here? It's just the two of them having sex all the time. Even so much so, like, Rich picked up on the fact that it was just a bunch of sex. Not a complaint, just kind of like
an observation.
An observation. Yeah.
You're an anthropologist. Yeah.
I'm doing my research. Overall, okay. Good. And was kind of expecting more dialogue from what we saw on the episode. And I think that's what was kind of probably what threw me off a little bit. But then as it kind of ramped into like character development and we started to see more Elena and more people from the Kingfisher and all these other people, it kind of like allowed us to connect with who were like particularly Kip's closest people. And it made me feel less about just sex.
Did anything change how you view the performance of the show?
Kip's dad knows that Kip and Scott are dating. And like on the show, we only see that Kip goes home and he has a moment with his dad, and that's about it.
Come here. What's up? Oh, hey. I'm sorry. For what? You got nothing to be sorry for, silly.
But there's a whole conversation that happens in the book where Kip's dad is so connected to his son and is so heartfelt by what his son is going through. He's obviously been away for a couple of weeks living with his boyfriend. And then all of a sudden he comes home because he's in a bad place. And his dad realizes, are you two fighting? And it was just a really heartfelt connection. Yes, we saw this moment of Kip and his dad play out on the episode where he's like trying to find his suit and he's running late and his dad, you're going to be a good boy. I love you. Take care. And then we get this moment in the book where he's like, I want you to be good, take care of yourself, take care of your man. Like, you guys are figured out, make it work. Just very heartfelt.
It added a layer of letting us know how close they really are. But I think the show did a really good job of depicting the fact that he didn't have to know what it was. You just know that your baby boy is coming home crying. He's upset. And it was handled beautifully given the limitations of the time and everything. But remember you said when Scott calls him out onto the ice that you felt like Kip's dad looked proud. And I told you I didn't notice that. You were right. Because in that moment, you already knew.
From where we're sitting and how we're doing this podcast, I think we're just dissecting things so much more now.
I didn't fully appreciate that there was such a negative internal struggle that Kip was dealing with. In the book, you really get to see that he feels inadequate. First of all, he needs to get a pep talk to even apply for the job at the museum. When he finally does and he doesn't get it, he just kind of spirals about it. And it just goes to show that Kip was dealing with a lot more than just falling for a guy that is closeted. He had his own struggles that were basically magnified when he fell in love with a successful athlete, And I think when he was worried that he was just convenient for Scott because Scott didn't have experience of hooking up with the same person repeatedly, and that eventually he would move on to somebody who is more adjacent to his league. All of his insecurities were magnified. It was so beautifully depicted in the book.
Yeah.
It gave me more of an understanding of where Kip was coming from.
He's 25, right? And that's such a age where you see people around you who've got their shit figured out. We would hear how Elena has this big job for a tech company and she's in IT, and then all of a sudden Maria is now getting a job with Starbucks, and he's just seeing himself, I need to figure my life out for myself. The book really does his persona as a character justice, but I feel the disservice was in his voice in this audiobook. It makes me want to buy the book, sit there with a highlighter and a pencil and actually read it to find some commonalities.
Let's move on to the missing scene, what we found that was in the book that wasn't in the show.
The moment where they go to the museum and Kip is explaining to Scott why history is so important. He's not sure how he wants to use his degree, but he knows that he has a passion and an interest for correcting narratives that have been misrepresented for marginalized communities. And Scott reads the sincerity that's coming from Kip. And so he asks if he can read the thesis. And Kip is taken aback. There's a moment where he's like, it's 90 pages long. And he's trying to talk him out of reading it. And Scott smirks and he's like, I'm an athlete, not a moron. It was just so precious to me because I've heard a lot of chatter online about, there are people who skip episode 3. There are people who are just not into Scott and Kip at all because they think that they lack depth. They're just seeing the romantic comedy aspect of it. And because it's not as tortured as the Shane and Ilya stuff, they're thinking that it lacks depth. But when reading the book, those kinds of moments are pivotal to showing like, no, just because it's not tortured, self-hating, and it's not this prolonged thing, there's depth and there's beauty in trying to build a healthy relationship and trying to connect. And that moment, like, to me, encapsulates that. And I wish that there had been some way to incorporate that in the actual show.
In the show. Yeah. I'm still a little surprised by what you just said. There's people that have skipped episode 3. That just ruined my brain. I mean, I have so many questions. Do they know what episode 3 is for them to know to skip it?
I think they skip it on the rewatch.
Why would you skip? I mean, I'm not going to say that episode 3 makes the series, but it plays a huge factor into what the series becomes. You know that saying, like, when you meet your person, you know who they are from the time you meet them? I think that this is what happened with Scott. And there was no questions for him ever at all. The moment Scott met Kip, he knew that was his person. And I think that was the turning point for him, realizing we saw this consistently throughout the book, him saying, I can't ruin this. I can't let him go.
What missing scene did you...
Scott saying that he's gay. And for me, it just goes deeper than to just the fact that he's saying I'm gay. To me, what caught me was like when we see the scene in the show where Scott invites Kip down to the ice, there's a whole discourse that happens to how Scott gets to that decision to invite him to the ice. And even in the conversation when Kip says, you don't have to do this, and Scott says, I do. Going back to what you said about how I said to you, like, his dad seemed so proud for his son. There was a conversation that we get in the book where Scott says to his manager at midnight, wherever the hell he is, I'm gay and I want to make an announcement. And then he tells his teammates that he's close to. And then he has a conversation with his coach and he tells him he wants to make an announcement. Like, this was a discussion and Scott came to the conclusion and resolution. And it was somewhat planned in his head. Perhaps maybe not everybody knew how he was going to do it, but it was not a surprise. But it was a surprise to everybody else around them.
People come out in stages, and so you do it with the people that you feel safest with first, and then you slowly start to branch out. But wow, the fact that he showed up at Kip's parents' home, yeah, that was amazing. I would have loved to seen that. And when he talks to his coach is so receptive to it because he was like a trailblazing black hockey player, you know? And so, yeah, I would have loved to see it. I mean, the book only made me appreciate the 3rd episode even more.
I've watched people who've read the books. It's been kind of like in their bottom 3. And I just feel differently now after getting through the whole book.
You want to go first with the moment that ruined your brain?
Yeah, and you called this out already, was like Scott showing up at Kip's house. It ruined my brain because he takes him up to his room. Like, what are you, teenagers?
Talk about sweeping somebody off their feet. The parents quickly were like, you chose well.
The dad be like, I've always been a Scouts fan. All right, what was yours?
The build up to the I love yous. We got chapters where each one of them came to the realization that they were in love, but they didn't actually verbalize it to each other because both of them felt like they were being a little ridiculous for feeling so attached so quickly. Kip was still at the apartment and kind of like ridiculing himself. Why am I getting so emotional about this? He's going to be back in a few weeks. And Scott comes right back in and he's like, planes, anything could happen. Dude is just confused. And then he's like, I love you. I just wanted to say that before I left. He just starts to try to talk his way out of it. Like, I don't expect you to say it back. Like, no pressure. Kip's started crying and he's no longer embarrassed to feeling so emotional about the fact that he was leaving. And I just thought that was handled so beautifully.
This book was like a masterclass in emotional intelligence because there are so many elements to understanding and nurturing yourself and learning how to not let the saboteur take over in moments where the saboteur is showing up really hard, but then also to be vulnerable and let yourself feel because you're feeling something that's true to your heart, just because it seems like in this instance too soon to say I love you. You're both human beings and you're allowed to have emotions and there are conversations, and just like you spend time with someone, even if it's 24 hours, like there's an emotional connection there. And I think even in this scene, in this moment, it goes back to like the first time Scott saw Kip. He knew that was his person. Like, to me, that's the whole roller coaster, like, of their evolution. He knew there was no way that he could let this person go.
You know, our twist on the scoreboard for when we're covering books was to decide whether the book leans heavier heat or heart. So what direction did you feel like it leans towards?
Heart.
Samesies.
So it was hard all the way, but seeing that vulnerability was just hands down.
I haven't lived that life experience. I was just projecting what I've known for people in my life who have been through it. And so episode 3, I felt like it must be really hard for somebody who has done the work of coming out and living their life out loud to have to then be regressed back into the closet because they're being kept a secret. And I really thought that that was his struggle, Kip's struggle with that. It's not fair to have him go backwards. But there was so much more to that. There was his own insecurities that existed before Scott ever entered the picture, and his own life frustrations and like social economic dynamics that were going on. Yeah, going on between them. It gave me so much more perspective. It made me even more emotionally invested in them. I could relate to it on even deeper levels because I know what it's like to not want to accept something from somebody, not wanting to feel indebted to somebody, you know, things of that nature. And the way that they talk about it, there was still that emotional maturity of they were never vicious with each other.
No.
They always treated each other as precious, even when they were completely frustrated and offended by what the other person was saying.
And there was a mutual respect to what the other person's decision was. In Scott's instance, he really knew what he was getting into with Kip. Kip wanted to point it out very heavily to Scott because it was almost like, I don't know if you don't like recall, I am a barista. He didn't say that, but he was trying to kind of point it out, even to the point of like when they were having that conversation, I think it was back to the suit, right? It's actually one of Scott's suits that's tailored for Kip. But he gives like a rundown of all the reasons you've made me so happy. For me to give this to you is no work.
Can we talk about the check?
Yeah, kick it off.
Early on in like when a relationship is brand new, when it's still getting established, when it's just supposed to be casual, I understand not wanting to accept certain things. I don't want you to feel like I owe you something. I get that kind of thinking, right? But once you're in love, I feel like it's a little different. I've been in positions where like I have more than the other person. And like, why wouldn't I want to make your life easier? What's mine is yours. Like, we're a team now because we're in love. I saw it from both perspectives. And I mean, student loans are a bitch. So like,
hey, I'm still paying mine. Wow. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Money changes everything. I understand from Kip's perspective how accepting this gift would have put him in besides how his mental health was to begin with around his own self, but then to say, I could do so much, this would help me tremendously and change my life. But to then have that feeling of like, you then owe someone something, even though they gifted it to you, and the person is saying to you, regardless of how they're interpreting it, that like, I have more than enough, like I would normally give to charity, I'd rather help you. It just changes things. Can definitely, I mean, I've been in situations where There's been relationships where someone has had way more than I've had socioeconomically. I'm like making pennies and they're making, we're well off, basically. You feel like you can't, like you're not bringing yourself wholeheartedly because you're not at that person's level and you're constantly climbing to get closer and closer to where they're at, to at least feel like you're contributing, even though that person's carrying almost all of the burden. But I feel like at some point, if you're building a life with someone, to your point, you have to then be okay and know that that's not going to come back to haunt you, or feel like you can trust the person enough in how they're there. Because I think that was his biggest thing, is like, yeah, this is a nice gift, a nice gesture. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. But I can't accept it. It's a struggle.
He said it was pride. Can I ask you something? Is that emasculating? Is this a patriarchy thing? Maybe I'm skewed because I'm a girl and I'm like, if you got $50,000 that's no sweat off your back, like, why wouldn't you?
No, it's a status thing. Like, I think there's elements where guys are like, there's always someone who's going to be the breadwinner versus the other. Like, unless like you're both lawyers and doctors and you have very similar salaries and you're like this from each other. You're not this far away. To me, it was because you're this far away. And the offensiveness that perhaps Kip felt in the beginning before Scott explained where it was coming from, because I think psychologically he's like, I'm not your charity. I don't think that this is demasculating him. I think it's more of like, just because I can't afford and I have student loans doesn't mean I can't pay them off. I've been paying them. I feel like a lot of people probably who've read the book are probably having these conversations in their social groups and their social circles and their group chats. It is a very important conversation among same-sex couples. And I don't know if people have enough of those conversations. I certainly, for a long time, Rich was always making more money than I am or than I was. And he still makes more money than I do. And he's retired from one of his jobs. Like, it's always that, like, am I giving enough? Am I ever going to have enough contributing into a relationship? So when I see this scenario, like, good for you for saying no. But then I think of like the future, because now they're living together. Are you going to like allow this person who is able to, and it's pocket change for them, to be able to help you be better off?
I know a couple, there is a huge disparity. It's a point of pride for him. Like, he doesn't want to seem like he's taking advantage, like he's with her for those monetary benefits. So because of that, he inconvenienced himself. He ends up putting himself in debt because she has expensive taste. So you're going to make her not go to the place that she wants to go because you can't afford it? No. So now he's trying to pretend he's a Rockefeller when he isn't. The
pride point, yeah. I understand that. I definitely do. It's hard. You should never put yourself in debt for somebody else. Get that. I understand it. It's a psychological mindfuck, because you know what your brain is telling you the right thing to do, but your heart is telling you to do something else. And you don't know how to always turn that off, because the other person isn't going to care or isn't looking for that. But you almost feel like because you can't give as much as they can, like you have to make up someplace else. And you're hoping that that person understands that what you're able to contribute may not be enough or the same, but it's something that you can do. And it doesn't always come off that way because you don't know how to use those words, because by saying that is almost making you feel less than, when it's really just more of you who is the problem, not the other person. It's a mind fuck.
Let's move on. Who are you nominating for the penalty box?
I struggled to find someone for the penalty box, and to give someone, I'm going to say Kyle. Kyle is the new bartender that Kip's been flirting while him and Scott have been on.
Thank you, Kyle.
While him and Scott have had this little bit of a tiff / break space. Although there's a kiss that's involved, the kiss was innocent enough where, like, even if Kip did it while there was a quote-unquote relationship, it was a kiss, not a fuck. And
Kip wasn't sure in that moment they were still together.
But he loved him. And and you could, like, when people say they want to break, right? Are you broken up, or do you just need space?
I have had enough Ross and Rachel conversation.
Right. So, I mean, It's like mind fuck, right? He's the only person that stood out to me that was viable for this position in this moment. And I'm giving him a timeout, not a full penalty box.
My penalty box nominee is the narrator for the horrific choice that he made with that Brooklyn accent. And I don't even want to give him the penalty box. I want to give him a sentence. I think he needs to go straight to jail.
Thank you. He is not collecting 200 from Go. He is not getting community chest. He is just like, you're in jail for the whole board game until we decide to take you out because you fucked Kip up, bitch.
The most relatable moment, what you got?
Move in with me. There's always this like stereotype, because it's a stereotype, but I think it's also like a little factual. We see this, play out on television when it comes to queer characters where, lesbians are packing up a U-Haul in a week. And to avoid this, I think we see a long enough discourse evolution of a relationship that happens over a series of months. But I'm pretty certain that after that first hookup, Scott wanted to ask Kip to move in with him. Almost as certain as we saw on the show where Scott says to Kip, I'd like for you to be here when I get back from my practice, as a signal of like, you can leave a toothbrush and all of your clothes if you want to, but that didn't happen. So the whole move in with me, to me, was really just telling of there's enough of a evolution in this relationship where they do it, but also just relatable in the sense that like I've had relationships where like I've been asked by the other person if I want to move in with them and it's only been 3 months. I was like, no, I'm not moving with you. I don't even want to be dating and we're hooking up, not calling it dating. I'm not moving in with you. Beautiful to like the point where it finally did happen for them. And, Scott did ask Kip to move in with him, but it's just really funny to like watch it play out in gay characters and how we see it kind of formalize. What was yours?
Mine was Maria when she's asking Kip to let her know if Scott has any teammates that are looking for an adorable Latina to take care of. And like Kip looks at her like, who are you talking about? Because who's adorable? Like,
oh, sure. Sure.
And she's like, tell them adorable. And by the time they realize I'm a total grouch, they will already be in love with me and it'll be too late. When I heard that, I was just like, that must be what Justin felt with me. Yeah. So yeah, Latinas keep it spicy and we're not easy, but we're worth it. And so when she said that, I was like, okay, Rachel, I don't feel stereotyped. I feel seen. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure Rich thinks the same thing. I was like, you married this. I don't know what to tell you. So I think it's just a Latino, Hispanic thing in general where we have strong personalities. It's just part of our culture and we love hard. We also get mad hard and all that shit. So I love that there was representation in the book.
All right. Well, now that we've overshared with the internet,
literally,
I think it's time to wrap this up. And join us next time.
Heated Reverence is hosted by Jose Miguel Longo and Lesley Obando.
If you enjoyed obsessing with us, hit the like button, and more importantly, follow the show or subscribe so you're invited to every hang session.
Tell us your own heat and heart score or the exact second a scene ruined your brain on Instagram and TikTok at Heated Reverence. You can also catch the full video version of the show on our YouTube channel.
And for long-form thoughts that need more than a caption, hit us at heatedreverence@gmail.com. We'll see you next week.